In the summer of 2019, Eden Hazard secured a dream move to Real Madrid. At that time, many argued that on his day he was the best player in the world. You would have thought the 28-year-old, at the peak of his powers, would have turned up to his new club hungry for success and finally take the final step in his career to winning a Ballon d'Or. But no, the 100 million euros man arrived at Madrid 5 kilograms overweight. And for the next 4 years, Hazard's body repeatedly failed him. Injury after injury led to his career fizzling out and him hanging up his boots by the age of 32. Many fans are sympathetic towards Hazard, saying he is another example of how unfair and cruel sport can be. Well, that's not quite the truth, because Eden Hazard was known to be the laziest trainer that all his previous teammates had ever seen. Hazard failed to train and condition his body in his 20s, meaning he was completely finished before even turning 30. His lack of dedication meant that the dream move to Real Madrid, a move pretty much every footballer in the world would envy, turned into a nightmare. Hazard's decline is a reminder for any athlete that a focused and strategic approach to training is crucial, not only to reach the top, but also to stay there. He failed to acknowledge the training red flags that countless other athletes also failed to spot. Even many at the elite level are blind to these, and it cost them their chance of truly fulfilling their potential. So buckle up, because we're going to uncover the 4 biggest training red flags that you should never ignore as an athlete. Doing so can cost you your entire career. But if you spot them early enough, you can continue your pathway to greatness. So let's get started. Now, the first red flag that many athletes often ignore is inconsistency in training intensity. It's a common pitfall where athletes fluctuate in how hard they push themselves, resulting in a yo-yo effect on their progress. One day you're like a rapid greyhound, the next you're a waddling sausage dog. This inconsistency can stem from various legitimate factors, things like motivation levels fluctuating, you're dealing with fatigue, or even the weather can put you off. And look, we've all been there. Some days you're just way more on it and up for it, and it's true that a different level of intensity is needed in different situations. For example, you're not going to be flat out sprinting for a whole session the day before a big performance in sports like football, basketball, and other team sports. You rightfully need to take things down a gear in certain situations. And so a key thing is to also be aware of periodization, where you adjust your training volume and intensity so that you don't overtrain and you peak at the right time. That's why you significantly decrease your training when tapering for endurance sports like marathon running and long distance cycling. So with this in mind, what I actually mean by inconsistency in training intensity is being inconsistent with knowing when and how to either dial up or dial down the intensity for when it's truly needed. And one of the best ways to deal with this is to engage in self-monitoring, which is your ability to monitor and regulate behavior in response to specific environments and situations. For example, in the lead up to a big performance, it's natural to taper down the intensity to ensure peak performance. However, if you find yourself not making the team and you need to prove your worth, sustaining a high level of intensity day in, day out becomes imperative for a few weeks until you actually correct that and get your shot. And to do this, before each training session, you should ask yourself the simple question of, on a scale of 1 to 10, how intense do I need to be today? This simple form of self-reflection forces you to evaluate your physical and mental state, allowing you to tailor your intensity accordingly. If you're gearing up for a crucial match that's still 5 or 6 days away, then you might need to be a solid 9 or 10. But on the other hand, during recovery phases, a 6 or 7 out of 10 might suffice. Being consistent in how you fine-tune this dial is what enables the very best trainers to prolong their careers well past the average for their sport. And so the second red flag is a stumbling block that many athletes also encounter, one that lingers for far too long before it's actually noticed. Performance plateaus. It's all too easy to fall into a trap of sticking to the same routine, doing the same exercises with the same intensity, and still expecting continuous improvement. But just because we are nailing certain routines or drills doesn't mean we're actually still developing, because we fail to recognize that we've actually stopped challenging ourselves. So let me share a personal example of this, one that recently happened to me at the gym. So I've made going to the gym a couple of times a week a consistent thing now for about 7 months or so. And before then, I was just running 5 or 6 times a week, doing 100 press-ups every other day, and doing a few squats and lunges here and there at home. But after starting strength sessions more consistently, I realized how weak I was, but I started actually making some quick gains with how much I could lift and also the number of reps I could do, etc. But with the gym I go to, there's a main weights area, then there's more of a mobility and functional area with mats and a few weights, but these only go up to 10 kilograms in terms of the dumbbells. And because I do full body workouts, I tend to just stay in that mobility area, and over time I've stuck with doing most of my exercises with the 10 kg dumbbells because it's a bit of a walk over to the other side of the gym to get anything heavier. So it was only the other day that the 10s weren't free, and nor were the 9s, which I would typically use instead. which then actually made me go over to the other side of the gym and actually pick up some 12s to bring back. I then did my usual routine and then really felt it the next day, because it was the first time in over a couple of months that I'd actually increased the weight. And hands up, I'd obviously plateaued, gotten too comfortable, and was just missing out on continuing to build my strength rather than just maintain it. So to avoid falling into the performance plateau trap like I did, athletes must regularly reassess and adjust the difficulty of their training. Obviously, the most notable practical suggestion is to really pay a lot more attention to progressive overload, gradually increasing the demands on your body over time. This could mean lifting heavier weights, incorporating more challenging exercises, adding tighter time constraints or even times you need to meet, or just adjusting the complexity of drills. Doing so keeps you in that stretch zone of development. It forces you outside of your comfort zone, which most of us just naturally want to chill in. Our bodies and minds will always try to protect us so that we look to just lounge in that area. But to keep progressing and developing as an athlete, you need to spend more time in that stretch zone, where it is more of a challenge and demands slightly more of you. But the key is not to do too much too soon, because otherwise you enter the panic zone. You freak out because it's too difficult, or you massively increase your chance of injury. This would have happened to me if I went straight to the 15s from the 10s instead of the 12s. So a good question to reflect on after every couple of weeks of training is, what should I be doing to spend more time in my stretch zone? This forces you to keep very aware of the true extent of your progress and just catches you from parking your butt in that comfort zone for too long. So moving on to our third red flag, this one could be a lot more sneaky, but is one that is super common among athletes in pretty much every sport. And the reason for this is because you're still in some senses still doing the right thing. However, as we all know, there can sometimes be too much of a good thing. And so this red flag is overemphasis on a single element. This is where athletes may focus excessively on one aspect of their game, neglecting the broader spectrum of skills required. A good easy one to understand is footballers working on their shooting. A lot will just do endless shots at goal where they're either driving forward towards goal or have the ball laid off to them to take a first-time shot from somewhere around the 18-yard line. But realistically, how many times in a game do you actually have or take shots like that? Not many, because chances are the ball pops up either from the left or right. It bobbles or comes at you from an awkward angle. So even though you've practiced your shooting for hours, chances are you've probably not practiced your shooting reactions. In other words, being anywhere in and around the penalty box and being able to adjust your feet quickly to get a shot off, even if it's a scrappy toe poke or sticking a leg out. A lot of the best goal scorers in football can sometimes actually have quite poor technique in terms of how they actually strike the ball. But they're masters of getting into the right positions, timing their runs, and being able to quickly adjust their body to get some form of shot off. So the point is, in overemphasizing the head down, clean strike into the corner style of shooting drill, you actually miss out on developing the full range of skills, movements, and reactions necessary to score a lot of goals in football. And I know it's tough to rectify something like this because you may be doing your training on your own, and there's only so much you can do unless you're playing in a court where you're passing the ball against the wall and it's pinging back to you. So how do you address this red flag? Well, this one does vary massively, depending on your sport, your position if it's a team sport, and even the tactics or style of play that your coaches want to instill in you. In any case, the general advice, which is basic but necessary, is to adopt a holistic training approach. Do your best to incorporate drills and exercises that encompass a wide range of skills relevant to your sport. Engage in position-specific training, but don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Like most other things in life, balance is key. Additionally, one of the best things you can do is really hound and actively seek guidance from coaches or trainers to identify areas of improvement and actually ask them to help you create a well-rounded training plan. Because on our own, it's very easy to fail to notice our blind spots, especially when we're working on something so aggressively and feel like we're making loads of progress. So a specific question you can ask coaches is something like, aside from the technique of my shooting, what else do you feel I need to specifically improve on in relation to this part of my game? And if they're a good coach, they'll then say things like, you need to be more comfortable with setting the ball with your weaker foot, or you need to ensure you're shielding the ball well better before turning your man to shoot. This will enable you to emphasize all the important elements associated with specific skills and your game in general. And so our final red flag is a direct follow-on from this, and it is yet again a subtle yet critical one: a lack of specificity in training. Many athletes fall into a cycle of coasting through their workouts without training with full intention or purpose. To understand why this is problematic, let's dive into the psychological concept of deliberate practice. Deliberate practice, as popularized by psychologist Anders Ericsson, goes beyond mindlessly repeating exercises. It involves targeted, purposeful, and mindful training aimed at improving specific aspects of performance. This type of practice has several key features that set it apart from the more mindless and general practice we can all be guilty of. Firstly, deliberate practice involves involves setting specific goals for improvement. Instead of just going through the motions, you need to identify weaknesses and work strategically to address them. The easiest way of doing this, which I'm sure you've heard me say many times before, is writing out performance intentions. So before training or practice, actually write down on your phone a few key things that you want to achieve in terms of specific skills you want to work on, the number of reps of a drill that you want to do, or even the specific mindset and attitude you want to train with. Secondly, deliberate practice requires focused attention, minimizing distractions, and honing in on the task at hand. It's all too easy to get caught up in the messing around at training. You know, people scrolling on their phones in the changing room and laughing and joking when the coaches are trying to organize you. But you can only truly progress and develop when you're giving your full focus and attention. And then thirdly, immediate and informative feedback is also crucial, as it allows you to adjust and refine your techniques in real time. This is why elite athletes in sports like running will once in a while work with a technique specialist. This will be someone who brings out a camera or an iPad to film an athlete's running style to immediately spot any inconsistencies in their mechanics and then actually work to fix those there and then in the very same session. The same can be done for pretty much any sport when form and technique are so crucial. And aside from these features, why is deliberate practice essential? Well, it's about quality over quantity. Mindful, purposeful training is far more effective than mindless repetition. One athlete who made deliberate practice a core pillar of his approach to training was Cristiano Ronaldo. So check out this next video here to learn how this led to his greatness.